I'll work to ensure that schools are communicating with parents, especially when it comes to issues that a school might be having with their child. Teachers and administrators need to be fair and firm when addressing disciplinary issues. Teachers should receive diversity and inclusion and discipline training. Teachers should be trained on establishing and implementing classroom behavior management systems. Students should also be treated equitably. Teachers and administrators should also be trained on appropriate ways of disciplining students and avoid labeling students, as this can result in students internalizing the label. We also need to ensure that all school resource officers are properly trained, engaged in the school, and known by the students. School resource officers should know how to handle minor infractions so that it doesn't escalate into a violent criminal incident. So those are the main things.
Has to be working with the other board members, right? So we have to make sure that we're looking at how schools are funded, first of all. That's important because they're funded by property taxes, a good portion of them. So right there, that sets off, inequities when we're talking about funding. Also, a lot of the extra funding that they get for Title I or whatnot is really allocated towards teachers and retaining good teachers, which is imperative, important, but it doesn't necessarily address supplies or other things that the schools might need because they don't have as much parental support. So engaging the public in that conversation, making sure that I'm working with the other school board members, but also more importantly, we have to make sure that we're advocating in Tallahassee and at the federal level that we're getting funding in general, because right now we don't even have enough funding to pay our teachers. We're taking out loans. So making sure that we're an advocate to make sure that our resources are higher and that our revenue is bigger and that we're looking at getting as much money as we possibly can, and then making sure that the budget that we pass matches the educational policies that we're putting into play, as well as just making sure that we have cultural and bias training within our schools, making sure that we're looking at restorative justice in some of our schools that struggle a little bit more. Overall, when we're looking at achievement scores, it's not just access to resources, but it's also, again, parental and community support. So making sure that we're looking at all of that holistically, and also each school individually. There's not one Band-Aid that's going to work for every school. You really have to go into each school. You have to get to know the students. You have to get to know the challenges, and then really come up with a catered plan for each school individually. And I think that's a conversation that we need to have as a school board. A lot of times we hear achievement schools thrown out, or we hear, but we're not talking about individual schools and what their challenges are and how we can meet those. So I think holistically looking at each school has got to be a priority as well. Oh, goodness, that's it. So interestingly enough, I've heard some actual discrepancies were actually based on other reports. We're 47th in pupil funding. So either way, we're at the bottom when it comes to how much we're allotting for our students. And again, unfortunately, a lot of that is mandated at the state level. But I think what's important is, as a school board member, you have the power to engage and educate your constituency and make those connections between, if you're passionate about education and you're engaged at the county level, we also have to maintain that engagement at the state level. And when we're, advocating for education, we need to make sure that we're advocating our state senators, our state legislators, and making sure that they understand that education is a priority. And again, funding is the main key, not only just looking at the state, but, and I've brought this up in a lot of different forums, and I'm not sure if people really understand, but there's a ton of money at the federal level that was created specifically for COVID municipalities that are struggling for resources because of COVID, that there are just low interest grants or loans waiting out there that either might be forgiven or way less expensive than what we're looking at as far as taking out a loan right now. So really being solution oriented and problem solvers to make sure that we're getting as many resources as we possibly can and being creative about it and bold, while also educating our constituency about what we have the ability to do, what we need to prioritize collectively, and how we can advocate at different levels for that.
With my background as a CPA and an auditor, I'll work to ensure that the Hillsborough County School Board is run efficiently, that procurement processes are efficient, and that, are there ways that we can save money? Are there ways that we could save money without impacting teachers' pay, teacher salaries. Obviously, that's the biggest priority because we want, that would be a last resort in my mind. I'll also work and be an advocate in Tallahassee for our schools because I think it's important to advocate for the school system to get more funding. I mean, when you look at the funding over the last 20 years, the actual dollar amount has increased, but when you factor in inflation and interest, or inflation, inflation, the actual real dollars have decreased over the last 20 years, and that shouldn't be occurring. I think during this challenging time where teachers are expected to do so much, it is critical that teachers have support and counseling available to them when needed. The school district should ensure that they are providing an adequate employee assistance program for teachers and staff. Teachers should be provided with resources and training so that they can deal effectively with stress and know when they should seek assistance or counseling. And it is critical that the district have a proactive plan for addressing teacher stress, burnout, and morale issues so that before it impacts the teacher's health and so that we don't lose good quality teachers.
So that's a kind of a two-pronged question. First, as far as teacher morale, I mean, as an educator, and I have said this as well, money is good, right? Making sure that we pay teachers a livable wage so that they're not out working several jobs like many of my teachers' friends are, whether it's proctoring exams or doing school tutoring or having to take extra jobs on top of the incredible workload that we place on teachers. So making sure that they have a livable wage is important and should be at the forefront, but teachers really didn't get into this to become rich, right? What they really want to do is they want to be appreciated. They want to be valued. They want to be included in the decisions and the conversations, and for too long, I feel our teachers feel unsupported and disconnected from our school board. So the first priority is to bring them into the process, include their voices into the decisions that we're making sure that we are not asking too much of them and listening to their concerns and addressing them and making them feel, like I said, valued and supported. That's the key to boosting teacher morale, is saying, thank you. You are the forefront of our education. You are the guiding light of what if our students succeed or not. As far as giving them autonomy and making them feel supported to be able to differentiate and reach the students, we have to stop pushing teaching for the test and these standardized tests. I mean, that is basically driving our entire curriculum now. It's driving all of our purchasing decisions when we're looking at software. And it's all the standardized testing, which doesn't allow for individual student achievement. Standardized testing is made for students who fit into the standard, very neurotypical students who thrive in, typical environments. And that doesn't allow teachers to really get a snapshot of each of their students' abilities through a test that either students don't pay attention to because it's on the computer, or they've learned to game, or they have anxiety about. That's not a true indication of where our students are. And when we're teaching just for that, and we're not allowing critical thinking skills to come, or problem solving, or conversation, or all of that intrinsic learning, then we're doing a disservice to our students. So pushing away from teaching towards the test and all this pressure around standardized testing, and trusting our teachers to use the skills that they acquired for many years in college, and then also many certification exams that they have to take, is really the best way to support our students and make sure that we're achieving educationally. I don't think teachers should be armed. I know personally as a teacher, that's not something that I would feel comfortable with. I don't think that's not what teachers went to school for, is to become school marshals. And I also worry about, we see so many shootings with our police force where there's fear and bias, and police carry that fear into their decisions, and sometimes they make decisions that are fear-based that could end up costing a life. And I would hate to put that responsibility on our teachers. I can't imagine being in a classroom, having a school shooter drill, not knowing if it's real, having the responsibility of trying to find a gun, figure out if it's armed, use it correctly. I don't want to take anybody's life. That's That's not what I signed up to do, to be a teacher. And I don't think it's the best way to go about trying to keep our students safe. And also you have the issue of access to a weapon in a classroom. I mean, no matter what safeguards you put in, there's no way to make sure that that's only going to be accessed by the teacher. And you're opening yourself up to student shootings, all sorts of, dangerous situations come into play when you start talking about arming teachers. So personally, honestly, just school shooter drills constantly are traumatizing. I can't imagine trying to be in the real situation and then having the responsibility of trying to use a gun to protect my students. So personally, that's a no for me.
Honestly, I don't think teachers should be armed. I think when you put armed teachers in a classroom, as a risk and safety manager, I've worked as a risk and safety manager a long time. I think the risks and the safety issues with arming teachers are, it's not an acceptable risk. I would stress that the only individuals that should be armed in a school would be trained law enforcement, if that.